Hello there everybody and welcome to a Q&A. This is the first time I've ever done this before. The channel recently hit 2,500 subscribers, and by the way, just once again, thank you all so much for the support. It's been amazing. The channel just keeps growing. It's so fun to see and to monitor, and just to have all the amazing comments and just kind words from all of you all the time. It really means the world to me, so thank you so much for the continued support. And yeah, so I figured I would do a Q&A because I've never done this before, and this seemed like a good time to do it. So a couple notes before we get started. I will not get to every question. I should get to at least most of them, but I got a lot of good questions from you guys. A few of them I just decided either I didn't have time to answer them, or maybe they weren't like necessarily appropriate or interesting to answer, so I left a few of them out. But I'm going to get to as many of them as I can. And another note is that I did an interview with Sebastian a couple months back, which some of you may have seen, some of you may have not. But there are a few questions that were addressed by my commenters that were answered in that interview, and I'm not going to answer them again here. So if you want to, there were a few things like where do you want to go as a result of playing GeoGuessr, or like how much time do you play GeoGuessr per day, stuff like that, were answered in that other interview. So I will leave a link to the description to the Sebastian interview, so you guys can go check that out if you want to learn a little more about me than what you get in this video. So without further ado, I'm excited to get started, so let's do it. All right, so our first question comes from Oops, who asks, have you always been interested in geography, or did GeoGuessr cause you to be interested? I have always been interested in geography. Since I was a little kid, like a really little kid, I was always obsessed with maps, especially trains. I was really obsessed with subways for some reason, but just maps in general. I just loved staring at maps when I was a kid, which I know is a very weird thing for a kid to do. But yeah, that was me. So it was more, I loved geography all my life, and I kind of discovered GeoGuessr and realized, wow, this is kind of the perfect game for me. Next question comes from Hunty, who asks, what is the most obscure piece of information you know related to GeoGuessr or geography in general? I've thought about this one for a bit, and I still don't have an answer. I've thought of a few things that are reasonable answers, but then I thought, this is kind of a paradox, because if I actually answered this question, my answer would no longer be the most obscure piece of information I know related to GeoGuessr or geography, because I just told everyone. So whatever it is, I'm going to keep it in my head for now. Undead Goat asks, if you could be any kind of tree, what would you be and why? I think I would be a redwood, because I am tall, and redwoods are tall. I think the tallest tree in the world is a redwood, if I'm not mistaken, and they're also just kind of a quintessential California symbol, and as somebody from California who lives close to redwoods, they are very, very cool trees. A Tarawak asks, what keeps you motivated for continuing to play GeoGuessr? Honestly, most of it is you guys. Like, the amount of support and just positivity that I get all the time from people is honestly incredible. Like, just the comments and all the community in the Discord server and everywhere else, it's just amazing the support that I get. And I obviously love GeoGuessr itself, but so much of it now has become like just the support that I get from everybody else, and also just the friends and the people that I've met, especially like going to Paris and meeting all the amazing people that I'd already met online in person, and just kind of forming like a deeper friendship with these people. It's just amazing because they're very like-minded people, and they're obviously super fun to hang out with, and I just love all of them. So yeah, it's the people basically, in the community. I love GeoGuessr as a game. I still enjoy the act of playing it, but just as much as that, it's the community. So the next question comes from Fungus, who asks, what would your dream job be? This is a good question, and one that requires a good amount of thought. And to be completely honest, if we're talking dream job, honestly, being a content creator, like that, honestly, I like that idea a lot. And of course, it's one that always was kind of in the back of my head, and it still is more just in the back of my head rather than in the front, because I can't be assuming that all of this is going to work out in that way. But if it were to work out in that way, I really like the idea of kind of doing this stuff full time, because I enjoy it, obviously, and I enjoy all the, the community, and the feedback that I get from everyone is amazing. But more than that, what that would allow me to do is, continue to make content, but I would also have time to do other stuff. And there are a lot of things that I really enjoy doing that, if I have a job, which I'm about to, it's going to be hard to sort of do other things that I really enjoy doing. For example, I really love learning languages, but I think it's going to be difficult if I'm working and doing YouTube to really find time to commit to something like that. Whereas if I was doing content full time, I would have time to I would have leisure time. I could learn languages when I wanted, and I could also do a lot of traveling and stuff. So the idea that I could just live my life making money off of content and then traveling and learning languages and doing things that are I'm really passionate about in my free time, that's kind of the dream. But above all, I want to just be happy, whatever I'm doing. That's kind of the crux of it. And I think imagining that lifestyle, I think I would be happy if I could get to that point. Undead Goat asks, what is your favorite piece of trivia? So I did Quiz Bowl for 6 years probably total, which is essentially just competitive trivia. So I learned a lot of trivia, and I have a lot of random crap in my head. So I just tried to think of one of the weirdest, most outrageous things that I remember running across in Quiz Bowl, and that is that there was a racehorse in the 1700s in England that was called Potatoes. The funny thing about this horse was that its name was spelled P-O-T-O-O-O-O-O-O-O. P-O-T 8 O's. So there was a horse with that name. If you look it up, that is the title of the Wikipedia article. It was actually a pretty successful horse. I think it won 30 races or something. Anyway, completely random, but there's a just useless fun fact for you. Lebe asks, what is your favorite game, aside from GeoGuessr, of course? And as an avid baseball fan, my answer is MLB The Show 23. Calamity says, what is your third favorite color? Interesting, oddly specific. I think green and purple are the top two in no particular order. Third, I'd probably have to go with blue. Basement asks, what kind of music do you like? That's kind of a tough one to answer because my music taste is just weird and kind of all over the place. For the most part, just a little bit of everything. I mean, I like listening to some pop music, some rock from whatever 70s, 80s, electronic stuff, like EDM kind of things, like Kygo, Alan Walker, stuff like that is good. Epic music, like Two Steps from Hell, is also really fun to listen to, and if I need to get something done, it's very sort of empowering. And there's more. There's all kinds of stuff that I listen to, but it's a bit all over the place, to be honest. All right, the next one is from Canthar, who asks, what's the last book you've read? I'm in the middle of this one, so I don't know if it really counts, but I'm going to go ahead and count it anyway. So my favorite movie is probably Interstellar, which you didn't ask, but there you go. That's probably my favorite movie. And my favorite thing about Interstellar is the whole point of the movie, sort of the founding idea of the movie, was to create a science fiction movie that is rooted in actual science. So everything in that movie is either known to be possible or at least theoretically possible based on what we know. And they had Kip Thorne, who is a Nobel Prize physicist, on as a consultant for the movie. So at every step they were basically asking him questions about, can we do this, can we do that, would this make sense from a scientific perspective, and he was kind of overseeing the movie the entire way. So Kip Thorne wrote, after the movie was produced, Kip Thorne wrote a book called The Science of Interstellar, which basically breaks down sort of step by step all of the science in the movie but makes it accessible for like the common reader instead of making it impossible to understand like any sort of physics paper would. So yeah, it's basically a book that you don't have to be some genius scientist to understand, but it breaks down all this super cool stuff like black holes, relativity, etc. Super, super interesting stuff. I've always been really fascinated by space in general. So I'm finding this book just incredibly interesting, and it's what I'm currently in the middle of. Geo Tyler asks, will you ever want to live anywhere else, or do you want to stay in the US? So I think I want to stay in the US for the short term, but in terms of if I'm thinking more big picture, I absolutely am interested in living elsewhere because I just love the world. I mean, there's so much beauty out there, and the idea of just living somewhere else and just having sort of a different experience and a different perspective on life is really interesting to me. I'm not sure where I would want to live. Maybe somewhere like France, so that I could use the sort of language skills that I have, and go to a country that I know I love. I mean, I went to Paris, and it was like, wow, I could totally see myself actually being here for longer than 2 weeks. So something like France, or maybe Switzerland, Belgium, something like that would be a wonderful place to live, I think. And definitely in the long term, it's something I will consider. Gessler asks, if you got the opportunity to wake up tomorrow suddenly perfectly fluent in a language of your choice, which one would you go for? Absolutely love this question. It's a super interesting thing to think about, and I don't know, there are a lot of really good options here. I think I would choose Japanese. I wanted to choose a language that's, distant enough from English so that it's not like easy to learn from the ground up. Obviously, Japanese is extremely difficult for an English speaker to learn, but it's also just like I'm really interested in, like, I love Japan as a country. Like, Japanese culture is super interesting to me. Being able to communicate in Japan would be amazing, and also, not having to learn all the kanji and hiragana and katakana, whatever. All of that seems like such a mess, and of course, it would help for GeoGuessr too. So there's a lot of positives. But yeah, I think learning Japanese would be really interesting, but I'm too scared to do it because it's so just daunting and different. Geo Tyler asks, tell us about your dog. Okay. So you may have heard him in the background quite a lot during my videos, because he enjoys barking at passersby because I don't know, he gets excited, or he thinks they're gonna kill us or whatever the heck dogs think. Anyway, but so that's the only sort of picture you've gotten of him, is him being loud and obnoxious during my videos. But he is an amazing dog. He is 2 years old. His name is Winston. He's a silver lab, which is like kind of a sort of rarer lab color that's some sort of crossbreed. I don't know how the heck it works, but anyway, he's a very cool color. And he's just a big sweetheart, to be honest. Like, if there was a robber or something who came to the house when only he was there, he would probably just like lick them. Like, he's a total softie. But he's an amazing dog, and yeah, we're lucky to have him. Another one from Geo Tyler, who asks, what was your childhood like in terms of hobbies, sports, etc.? Again, I was kind of a weird kid who just enjoyed looking at maps and making lists of things and not interacting with other humans. But there were a few things that my parents tried to get me into that never really stuck. I played piano for quite some time, was never really that into it though. I did Taekwondo for a couple of years, again, never really liked it very much. And I think the few things that I was truly interested in, I was very like sort of attached to. So it's like I don't have a ton of like passions, but the few things that I was really interested in were just kind of just took all of my time, and most of that has just been kind of geography, maps, etc., stuff like that. I did play sports as well. I played baseball, basketball, and soccer for a period, but was never really great at any of them. I did at least enjoy playing sports, but I kind of just stopped when I realized everyone else was better than me. But yeah, honestly, just I love, even to this day. I mean, it's great that I found GeoGuessr because it's like kind of my main hobby now, and it's like something that I'm really good at and something that I can stick to, and I just really enjoy it. So I'm glad I've made it to the point where I've finally found that kind of hobby that fits me. We have a question from Met Levser who asks, who is the best GeoGuessr player of all time for you? Now, my answer to this is without a doubt Blinky. And I think there are a lot of other people who would agree with me here. And there are some players who wouldn't, because a lot of players only watch No Moving and only watch Rainbolt tournaments. And they would just say the people who have won the most Rainbolt tournaments. But Blinky is on a level that I think no other GeoGuessr player is on. And given how the game kind of progresses, the best GeoGuessr player right now is just the best GeoGuessr player of all time, because players are just constantly getting better. And I think Blinky is easily the best player. The stuff that he does is just like, I can't, it's like unfathomable. To be honest, he's kind of just the player that I aspire to be. Like, he's just me on steroids. Like, I'm good at a lot of stuff. I think of myself as a very sort of a player with kind of a wide range of skills. Like, I'm good at moving, I'm solid at pinpointing, I'm good at narrowing down information, I'm good at no moving, I'm good at NMPZ. I'm kind of decent at everything, but not like the greatest at anything, if that makes sense. But Blinky is kind of just better than me at all of those things, and he's an incredibly well-rounded player. And it's amazing to watch him play. Just the speed with which he does things, the way he's able to get these like moving speed runs in the time that he gets them, and just the amount of knowledge that he has in his head is honestly, it's extraordinary. And like, for me, like, I have a lot of respect for great no moving players, like, I don't know, whatever, Rainbolt or Bag or Jupa or whoever. These people are great players, but to me, the best GeoGuessr player is one who can play GeoGuessr at the highest level in no matter what mode, because there are so many ways to play the game. Moving, no moving, etc. It's like all of these modes require completely different skill sets, and to be the best for me, you have to be good at all of it. And Blinky is absolutely good at all of it, and for me, he's absolutely the best. And he won the Paris tournament with his team, and he deserved it. I mean, they were the best team at that tournament. They were the most well-rounded team at that tournament, and they showed it. And Blinky, I think, he's just the absolute, just top player, the player that everyone should aspire to be. Certainly the player that I aspire to be. His skill is incredible, and yeah, for me, he is the greatest of all time, without a doubt. Next question is from GC, aka Geography Challenges, who asks, if you were to plan a GeoGuessr competition, which formats would you use as a fair test of skills? Another question that I absolutely love. I've thought a lot about this as well, just over time. So, the Paris tournament, the World Cup, the LAN, it was a tournament that I expected to go poorly, just because it was the first ever in-person event ever for GeoGuessr, and it was like, this is just a new thing, so it's bound to have its flaws. Like, I didn't think it was going to be a total train wreck, but I thought it was going to be rough in parts. But it ended up being amazing, and I was super proud of just how well organized the tournament was. And one of my absolute favorite things about that tournament was how well it tested every set of skills. So just going back to what I just said about Blinky, I am a firm believer that every mode of GeoGuessr is equally valid and equally important. Moving is no less valid than no moving, and the reverse is true as well. Everything is important. To be the very best GeoGuessr player in the world, you should be great at everything. That tournament tested exactly that. There were moving games, there were no moving games, there were NMPC games, there was a diverse range of game modes used. A lot of them were taken from the game modes that they use in the French League. But for the most part, there were a few that probably didn't need to be there, like BR Distance was kind of, probably should not have been in the tournament. But for the most part, that tournament was incredibly well done, in my opinion. And it also, it tested the skills that it needed to test. And at the end of the day, the best team won. And the second best, third best team were also near the top. I think that Radu, Mate Potato, and Toro, that was, I mean, RC, I haven't mentioned him yet, but he's like maybe number 2 in the world for me, because again, he is so good at everything. He's so good at moving, he's so good at no moving. He's an amazing player, and his team made it super far as well, because he was really able to show off his full range of skills in that tournament. And our team as well. Again, I think we're maybe more primarily a moving team. Me, Calamity, Tall, GC. I think a lot of us are considered more moving players than NM, but we had also some players who were really strong in no move. And again, we made it really far because of just the range of skills that we had. And a lot of the teams that were there were primarily moving teams. A bunch of them were just French players who basically only play moving, and they struggled to keep up with the no moving modes. And so the point I'm trying to make is that that tournament did a fantastic job at testing the skills of players, and I think that most of the best players in that tournament were the ones who made it really far. So if I were to organize a GeoGuessr tournament, I would do it very similarly to the way they did it in Paris. And I hope that they keep a similar format for next year, because I am super, super impressed by just the choice of modes there, and the true test of skill that it provided for all of us who played. Next question comes from Illusion, who asks, if you could only choose one, which country would you pick to have official Google Street View coverage that doesn't have it already? And for me, I think here the answer has to be China. China is huge, and it is so much more beautiful than people realize. It is just absolutely full of stunning landscapes, beautiful cities, it's got basically everything. And it's a country that would just be incredible to have. If we had like Gen 4 Google Street View in that was extensive in China, that would be extraordinary. And of course, it's never going to happen. Certainly not anytime in the near future. But yeah, China's it's just a stunning country, and I would love to see it in Street View. We have a question from Dibnik, who asks, what kind of GeoGuessr training resource do you wish existed but doesn't? I mean, the evolution of training resources in the just past months or years has been quite amazing. There's so much more now than there ever used to be. Sites like GeoHints and Plonket and stuff, and the Plonket Discord server, which I will leave in the description. I've sung its praises before, but the Plonket server and the quiz bots and stuff are amazing for learning things related to GeoGuessr. But what do I wish existed but doesn't? It's a tough question. I think I would have to say I would love it if there was some sort of database for GeoGuessr pros. So what I mean by that is a list of like players and sort of specialists in certain countries. Like if you had Zigzag, who had a little profile and was like, Zigzag is good at these particular countries, say Australia, and then you had Jupa, and like Jupa's good at Russia and Brazil. And if there was some sort of database like that any sort of new player could look at, and if they're interested in getting into a certain country and getting better at a certain country, sort of a database to look at which pros and which players are the best at that kind of thing. And it doesn't have to be countries, it could also be like specific modes or whatever that certain people consider themselves sort of specialists in. So some sort of database where the pros volunteer to put their names up there and to have people look at that, and maybe you could have some sort of paid, like, I don't know, like lesson system or something, or it doesn't even have to be paid. It could just be a way for learning players to reach out to pros and be like, hey, like, can you give me any tips for these things? Because the reason I say this is because I find that maybe the most efficient way to learn for me now, if I'm trying to learn a specific country, is to reach out to a pro and be like, hey, can we play a little bit of X country, and can you give me some tips? It's super helpful for me. So you might have seen that I did a video with Zigzag on Australia that was exactly that. and it was super, super helpful. I feel like I got a lot better at Australia even in that short amount of time. So if there was a resource like that where any sort of learning GeoGuessr player had an easy way to reach out to a GeoGuessr pro about something, learning something specific, and they could get sort of tips, sorry about the noise, if they could get sort of tips on whatever they wanted from somebody who really knows what they're doing, I find that's a super efficient way to learn. And if there was an easier, more organized way for that sort of pipeline to happen, if that makes sense, I think that would be a super useful and interesting resource. Michael asks, what are your levels of competence in various languages other than pronouncing them really well? So yeah, it really is just pronouncing. If there are people watching me that think I'm some sort of like crazy polyglot person, I'm not. Like, I speak English, obviously. I speak good French. I'd say I'm like maybe 90% fluent. I think I was pretty close to 100% around 5 years ago, but I'm very rusty because I haven't spoken a lot of French in recent years. But aside from that, it's not much. I have base level Spanish and Italian, I would say, and beyond that it's basically nothing. But yeah, the pronouncing stuff, I mean, I'll just segue into the next question. This is from SH Possibilia, who asks, how on earth are you able to pronounce so many languages that incredibly well, including my own native language of Swedish? Do you have a special interest in languages, or is it just pure talent? I don't know. I mean, a bit of both. Like, I do have a special interest in languages, but it's not like I actually speak all these languages that I'm able to pronounce. I don't know what it is. I guess this is like a gift and a rare thing, but I can kind of just replicate sounds that I hear pretty well. Sometimes it takes a good amount of practice, like doing the language intros. Some of them were easy and took me like not long at all, and some of them took kind of forever because I had to really get used to just the intonation, even for sort of a short series of sentences. But basically, I'm able to hear sounds and kind of just replicate them and sound at least close to how like a native would sound. Obviously, it depends on the language, and I think there are certain languages that I could not do that for. Like, I think if I tried something like Thai or like Vietnamese or something, some super complicated like tonal language with a bunch of unfamiliar sounds, I would probably have trouble with stuff like that. But most languages, at least like European languages that are fairly common, I'm kind of just able to say them, and I don't know how or why, but it's kind of a cool thing to be able to do. But it does not mean that I actually speak these languages well, because I don't. And does your this is from Keiko Tetsuya, does your interest in traveling disappear because of GeoGuessr and knowing all countries and most of the attractions? Absolutely not. I mean, it does not matter how much GeoGuessr I play, how much Street View I look at. There is nothing like the real thing. It's not even close. Like, going to a place and seeing a landscape and like feeling the air and like, I mean, it's not even comparable. Like, so no, absolutely not. It's not like now that I've seen a bunch of Norway in Street View, I just go to Norway and be like, oh, this sucks, I've seen this already. Like, no way. It's just as beautiful. I mean, it's more beautiful in person, of course, than it is on a computer screen. But if anything, GeoGuessr increases my sort of want to travel, because it's like I see how beautiful these places are and I'm like, damn, like, no, I really want to see this place in person because of just how much more amazing it would be. Pedro asks, which countries or regions that are covered by GeoGuessr would you say are the most beautiful in each continent? Now, the short answer for this is going to just be mountains. I don't know what it is about mountains, but I absolutely love mountains, and my favorite types of landscapes and even just places to visit are just mountainous places. So for North America, I would say, like, I really love just the West, like Sierra Nevadas and the Cascades, California, Oregon, Washington. The mountains that you get there are amazing, and I've obviously been to those mountains myself, and I know how incredible they are in person. So yeah, that's my answer for North America. South America, I would say southern Chile and Argentina. Again, mountains, Patagonia, some of the national parks and lakes and everything down there are just breathtaking. Europe, I would say it's the Alps, northern Italy, Austria, Switzerland, France, Slovenia. Just, again, absolutely love the landscapes that you see there, just breathtaking. Uh, Africa, I would say, in terms of what's covered by Street View, I would go with South Africa, specifically the Cape Town, Western Cape area. Just some incredible mountains down there as well. Just the most beautiful thing for me. Asia, Asia's tough. I think I really like Japan. Again, mountains and the architecture, and it's just a really beautiful country to me in general. And another sort of underrated one in Asia is Kyrgyzstan, which I wish there was more Google Street View coverage in Central Asia, because there's obviously a lot of beauty there that we don't get to see. But Kyrgyzstan is kind of a little snapshot of how beautiful that sort of part of the world is. And then finally, when it comes to Oceania, New Zealand, South Island, New Zealand, the mountains, the fjords, etc., just stunning. Tao asks, what are you pursuing outside of the game? Studies, jobs, any hobbies, really? When it comes to hobbies, not a whole lot, because GeoGuessr is kind of my hobby at this point. It's like my whole life, it's like I've been searching for a hobby that really fits me well, and I've kind of found the thing that A, I really love, and B, I am like really good at and can be one of the best in the world at. And I feel like I've kind of found my niche, so that's what I have in terms of hobbies right now, and I love it. In terms of studies and jobs, I graduated from college in September, which is a while ago now, and ever since then it's been kind of just a job hunt. And I just recently got a job, which I mentioned in a recent video, but I will be working part-time starting pretty darn soon, tutoring people for like high school students for standardized tests, ACT and SAT. And yeah, it's kind of a great middle ground for me, because again, like a part-time job allows me to still continue with the YouTube at basically the pace I'm currently doing it, but I also, have a job and I'm not just sitting at home being a disappointment. So it's a good middle ground for me. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at in life at the moment. Shaner Knight asks, who do you respect the most in the whole GeoGuessr community? Also, what has been your best guess in your whole time playing? The first question is an interesting one, and there are so many answers to this. Like, I could name like 30 people who are worthy of being the answer to this question. My answer is going to be Sebastian, because I really, really love what he has been doing with the interviews, because he's kind of just making these these figures in the GeoGuessr community just more known to people. And I did an interview with him. I was one of the first ones, but he's still doing them at a really great pace. And he's such a great interviewer, and he asks really interesting and good questions. And I just love that he's kind of just making the GeoGuessr community more accessible to basically everyone by just profiling these players and giving people a really good sense for who they are. So absolutely love the work that Sebastian's doing, and I respect the hell out of him. Although, of course, there are plenty of other people I could say. Like Blinky, I respect so much for just what he brings to the game in terms of just pure skill. And then there are so many people who are just great people like RC, like I mentioned before, or Kodiak, or GC, or Mate Potato, or etc., etc., etc. So many people who are they're just amazing people. Wolf Trekker too. I have to mention him because he's just an awesome guy. But so many amazing people in the community, and I respect them all. And it was so wonderful to meet them in person, and I'm so glad to have been able to do that. As for the second question, my best guess in my whole time playing, this is not an easy question to answer because I've had a bunch of random, fun, insane guesses. But in terms of like the impact, I would say in my round of 16 game at the Paris World Cup against Atlas, I had a guess in the team duel it was a rural round in California that we thought was like Europe or New Zealand, and then after a while I realized, wait, could this be California? This was not broadcast on the stream because they were probably watching Blinky instead or something, but it ended up being California, and we won the team duel largely because of that guess, and just because of kind of the situation it happened in and how sort of difficult the location was, it was an amazing moment for me and for the team. So yeah, that's probably my favorite guest that I've had. Next question comes from Hamfrags, who asks, if you had the option to remove all meta clues, camera quality, Google car, camera height, rifts in the sky from Street View, what would you prefer? I think I would prefer it if meta did not exist in the game, because at the end of the day, the game should be about, guessing where you are based on real life clues, landscape, architecture, etc. Like, there's Winston. It kind of feels like, to me, meta is, it's just not as interesting as a clue. And I think, I concede, of course, that to be the very best, you just have to learn this stuff. But if it wasn't there, like if we didn't have to worry about what countries were covered with what camera and like what color the Google car was, it would just be better off that way. And I wish it was that way, because the game would feel a bit more sort of pure in that case. But it's not how it is, so oh well. And he also asks, have you felt burnt out from playing GeoGuessr? I would say no, not significantly. Maybe a little bit. There were some days where I'm like, God, I don't feel like playing because I've been playing so much kind of thing, but not to the point where it's like, man, I really need to take a long-term break from the game. And I hope I don't get to that point. And all the positive feedback, like I mentioned, that I get on the videos and stuff really helps me just stay motivated to play. So for the moment, there's no really signs of that, but I could definitely see it happening eventually. Like, I could get burned out at some point, and I would probably just have to take a break. But for the moment, it's so fun and it's so great to interact with all of you that no, it doesn't burn me out at all, which is really awesome. I have a lot of people asking, how do you memorize things? And I feel like I never have a very good answer for this because it's kind of different for everyone. But I've gotten this question like 5 times, so I feel like I have to at least address it. So people ask, like, what is your strategy for memorizing things like subdivisions, and do you have any tips? Look, it's different for everyone. Again, like, a lot of people use flashcards and stuff, and that's perfectly valid. It's not something that I've ever done. I just repeat things. Like, basically, when I'm learning subdivisions, I just use the Plonket quizzes in the Discord server, and I just grind the subdivisions, and then once they kind of are a little bit fuzzy, I need to just do them again and again and again periodically over time. So it's kind of just repeated, and it takes a long time, but eventually it kind of sticks. So yeah, I would say repetition is like the main thing that really fixes these things in my head, but I don't have much more in terms of specific tips for memorization. Just, I don't know. I just do what works for me. I repeat until it sticks, and that's my strategy, basically. I kind of said the same thing like 3 times there, but yeah, that's what I've got. Noah asks, what is your favorite country you've traveled to, and where would you like to travel most if you ignore how unsafe certain countries are? Now, I've answered the question in the Sebastian interview of where I'd like to travel, like, as a result of GeoGuessr, but it's kind of interesting when you remove the sort of safety aspect, because there are a lot of gorgeous countries in the world that are just not very safe to travel to. So I think I would go for Afghanistan. It's a really pretty country with some amazing mountains and wonderful culture and wonderful food, and I think it would be a really beautiful place to experience. But obviously, the situation in Afghanistan right now is just not. It's not really a place you can visit and feel safe at all right now. So I hope sometime in the future that it improves, because that's a country I would really, really like to see. And in terms of what's your favorite country you've traveled to, that's such a hard question, because every country is so different. Like, I've been to Japan, I've been to Kenya, I've been to Italy, for example, and those are just, you can't even really compare those countries. They're just completely different, and they're all so wonderful in their own way. So I don't have a single answer for this. I just love traveling wherever I'm going. So Japan, Kenya, Italy, Peru, like, all wonderful, wonderful countries. that are so beautiful in their own way, and I would recommend visiting all of them. And there's more too that I've been to that's just wonderful. But yeah, they're too different, so I can't choose one. Next question is from Bob, who asks, what are your strongest countries or regions, or your weakest countries or regions? I would say strongest US, Canada, Japan, and maybe Indonesia, I would say I'm pretty strong in. And weakest, I would say Russia, India, and Mongolia. Next question from Kjetil Knudsenan fan 3156. I butchered that, I'm sure. My apologies. What is one story that you have that you can't explain what happened? I have a good answer for this, actually. So, one of the hobbies that I had as a kid that I didn't mention is chess. My parents put me in chess classes for a time, and so I would just go to chess classes sometimes, and I always enjoyed playing chess. I was never great, but one just incredibly weird thing that happened at one of my chess classes. So we had pictures on the wall in the classroom of great chess players. So there was a row of pictures that was the world chess champions in order. So you had Steinitz, Lasker, etc., all in order. And then on the other wall, there was a picture of Paul Morphy, who was sort of considered like almost the zeroth champion. He was like the best chess player before the world chess champion was a title that existed. So one day in the class, the teacher decided to do a lesson on Paul Morphy. So we went over a few games from Paul Morphy. And this, by the way, I'd been going to this class for like a couple of months, and that Paul Morphy picture had been up on the wall the entire time. And so the teacher goes, today we're going to be talking about Paul Morphy, and we're going to be going over a couple of his games. And at that moment, the Paul Morphy picture, which had been sitting up on the wall for months, even years, fell off the wall and landed on the ground, on the floor. And it was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. It was like nobody was touching it, fiddling with it. We were all just sitting, and the moment the teacher starts talking about Paul Morphy, he falls off the wall. It was freaky. It was crazy. And finally, the last question I'm going to answer is from Mpeti08. And the question is, have you ever gotten a Snapchat from a girl? This is the first question that Rainbolt answered in his Q&A video, and it's the last one that I'm going to answer. Now, he didn't answer it seriously. I guess I will. No, not in the sense that you're thinking. Obviously, I hate Snapchat as a platform. I think it sucks, but so I basically never used it at all. But I've used it on occasion to communicate with people. So I have talked back and forth with girls. So technically I have gotten a Snapchat from a girl before. But if you're thinking I'm getting Snapchats from random girls because they found me on YouTube or something, no. Maybe one day, but we're not at that point yet. So that is going to be all for the Q&A. Thank you all so much for sending in the questions. I really enjoyed just reading them and thinking up answers. So it's really great questions from a lot of you. So thank you so much for that, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video as well. If I didn't get to your question, feel free to just respond, like leave a comment under this video and just like repeat your question. Like if you really want to know the answer, I'll be happy to just answer you in the comment. But yeah, hopefully I answered most of the questions that you guys wanted answered. And yeah, hopefully it was an interesting watch. So thank you all again for watching, and I'll see you later.